Skate Talk Online, the ultimate figure skating resource.
Hi everybody, I'm Tim Goebel, the 2002 Olympic bronze medalist, world silver medalist in 2002 and 2003, and I was, until this year, the original quad king.
You've been retired since 2006. What have you been up to since?
I've been pretty busy since I stopped competing. Late 2006, I enrolled at Columbia University, where I did my undergraduate in mathematics. And then upon graduation, spent several years working at Nielsen doing marketing analytics. And then from there went to agency world and did a bunch of marketing analytics there, as well as getting a master's in data science. And now I'm working at Google doing partner and vendor relationship management.
Do you still follow skating at all? And do you play any part in the sport?
Yeah, I do try to stay involved in skating quite a bit. I'm in some leadership positions. So, for example, I'm on the board of Skating Club of New York. I'm on a few of the USFSA committees as well. And I really try to stay involved on the governance side. At one point, I was a technical specialist, and due to work and school and other things, I let that lapse. But I'm hoping to reinstate myself this coming March and start being a tech specialist again.
Skate America starts in a few days. You are a two-time champion of this event. In 1999, you actually became the first person to land 3 quadruple jumps in the long program at Skate America. Talk about the preparation for that event. Did you feel like that was going to be the time that you landed the 3 quads? Did you feel prepared? How did it feel afterwards?
Yeah, going into Skate America for '99, when I was planning on doing the 3 quads in my program, I felt really, really good going in. It was something I was able to land all 3 in the program um, at least twice a week. I would say 2 to 3 times a week. So I knew it was something that I could do. Obviously, being the first competition of the year, a little bit of nerves going in just because it was a new program and it was by far the most squats I had ever done. But I felt physically and mentally like really well trained for it. But afterwards, having done it once was cool, but then it was like, oh wait, now that's an expectation. So it was tough to kind of keep that momentum going. And I think for the rest of the season, I wasn't able to repeat the 3 quads again until nationals. So I set a really high bar for myself, and it continued throughout the rest of my career to be kind of a really high bar, both for myself and my competitors.
What was the feedback like before you landed the 3 quads as far as United States figure skating went and even international judges? And then after landing the 3 quads, did it kind of shift where people expected even more of you, or did they expect you to be on this 3 quad level almost every time you skated?
I think going into the competition, not many of the international judges knew that I had planned on trying 3. Obviously, USFSA knew because I'd been monitored for this season, etc. I don't think anyone actually expected me to do it. I think the general consensus was I would have to try it for like a full season before I was able to actually do it. So I think people were caught a little bit off guard. I know some of the judges on the panel were caught off guard because they weren't sure if the third one was a triple sow or a quad sow. So there was a lot of confusion there of like, wait, what do you mean he tried 3? No one's done that. Like, why? They just weren't expecting it. But I think from that point on, people knew that I could do it, so it was kind of there was a shift in the expectation. I think on the flip side of that, while on the technical side, I was considered at that point to be probably the strongest technical skater in the world. I think it put more of a spotlight on the fact that I wasn't the most artistic, because I really kind of pigeonholed myself into being just a jumper. So I think it was a little difficult on the artistic side to kind of overcome that, and to kind of develop the second mark and the artistic side of my skating.
A year later, you came back to Skate America and you upset the reigning world champion, Alexei Yagutin. You talked before about how this bar was raised once you did the 3 quads. Very next season, you're beating the world champion. Do the expectations just go out the window now? Does everyone expect that you're going to be the world champion that season from that point?
I think once I had started beating people that were on the podium at Worlds, it became not so much an expectation that I would beat them in the future, but I really think that made me sort of defined me as someone that was competitive for a spot on the podium, not just at World Championships, but leading up into that next Olympics. I think that really helped to solidify me as a real contender. It wasn't sort of a one-off thing. The first season that I had landed the three quads, I had a good international season. I made the Grand Prix final, and then Worlds was pretty abysmal for me, and I didn't finish in the top 10. So I think coming back the next year and showing growth in other aspects of my skating, and then beating people that were at on the world podium, I think really set me up to sort of a different standard where people knew that I could deliver and also was able to grow and improve other things and really be a contender moving forward.
Talking a little bit about the mechanics of the quads, why do you think you specifically were so successful? I think you landed 76 quads in your career. You skated at a time where we did see quads. The Russians, Plushenko and Yagudin were doing them pretty easily. But aside from that, it wasn't commonplace really. So why do you think it came so easy to you?
I think two things. I think I started them when I was very young. So I started working on quad sow when I was 13 or 14, and I was landing them in practice by the time I was 15. So I think starting them at an early age was a big determinant in me being able to do them, and I think part of it too was just my physical makeup. I'm not that tall. I don't have like really long legs or anything, so proportionally, my shape just fit better to rotating very quickly. I have very narrow hips and shoulders. I was very light at the time, and I think that generally people of that stature just rotate better. If you look at, Nathan Chen, if you look at even way back, if you look at Tara Lipinski, if you look at some of the females that were sort of trendsetters with triples and things, just having a really small, narrow body type is really beneficial. And also Carol and Glenn, my coaches at the time, never sort of made it out to be a big deal. They were like, go and try this and you're capable of doing it, so you should do what you're capable of. So it never was sort of framed in a way that it was unattainable. And I think sometimes coaches do a disservice where, when they want kids to hold off on stuff, they're like, oh, you shouldn't work on this yet, you're not ready, it's really hard. I think that kind of does something like mentally to kind of make that an unobtainable thing. Carol and Glenn were like, go for it, you can do this, you're over rotating triples, why not? Like try quad loop, try quad flip, and I did. And so I think having that mentality of like nothing is unobtainable, it's just a matter of time and a matter of repetition.
And something I don't think I've ever seen. Did you ever land the loop or the flip in practice?
I landed loops in practice quite regularly. I think I did like one or two flips, but it was never something that was going to go in a program. But just having done so many repetitions on the sow and the toe, just with the amount of injuries that I was getting, at that point, I didn't need more on the technical side, so I decided to like stick with the three in the program, the two different takeoffs, and get them more consistent and not get banged up as much when I was training.
How do you think men's skating will progress now? Do you think there's someone that will sometime very soon land the quad axel, or do you think that's still either a little bit far off or even impossible?
I think at this point, after last Olympic season with all the quads that were done, I think 6 is now the current record. I think that will be true for a while. I think just the wear and tear on the body, the number of people that are capable of doing 6. I mean, realistically, we're talking about 2 or 3 athletes in the world that can do it consistently. So I think Nathan and his peers have set the new bar. I think that will be sort of the upper standard, at least for the next Olympic cycle. I think 2022 we'll see similar content in terms of, unless they change some crazy rule. I think the difficulty will be similar in content to what it is now. On the men's side, I think the women will be doing more quads. We're seeing that a lot in junior. Quad axle, I think, is something that won't necessarily happen anytime soon, and that's only because with the forward takeoff, you see even with the athletes now that are doing quads very easily, one of the first things to go under pressure is the triple axle. Gets a little sketchy. So adding the nerves of competition, the difficulty of the takeoff, the difficulty of just the element itself, I don't think we'll see it anytime soon. But I'm glad I never had to try one.
One of the rule changes this year is that only one quadruple jump can be repeated in the free skate. So if we look at it that way, yes, only without the quad axle, only 6 quads would be possible now under those rules. Do you think there should be a limit at all on the quads in the program? You see the triples and you're allowed to repeat 2 triples. Why do you think they reduced the quads to 1?
I think it's because some of the programs last year, at least for the men, got a little messy. Being able to execute 6 quads in a competition setting and putting them in your program and training them are 2 different things. And I think what they're trying to get the athletes to refocus on is doing programs that they're capable of doing, perhaps backing down on the difficulty a little bit by removing the second repeat. But making the programs more obtainable, just so that the lungs don't get so messy with the falling and the popping and the falling on pops. And, I think part of it too is that mentally taking on the commitment of doing all of those really difficult elements, it's a lot. It's a lot to do consistently. And I think they're trying to focus, or they're trying to get the athletes to focus more on quality this season, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing.
And as someone that has been involved with IJS, if you remember 8 years ago, Vancouver Olympics, you really didn't see a lot of skaters attempting the quads because the way the system was at that time, if you even slightly under-rotated, if you failed, you really didn't earn any points for the element. They shifted that the following year, and throughout the years they've really built, there's an under-rotation, there's a downgrade now. So you at least get points for doing that. Do you think the current state of what they are getting rewarded for is correct, or do you think it still needs to be worked on?
I think we're in a good spot now. So last year, I think the risk was a little bit overvalued still. I think there did need to be, it was too far out where like you could just try whatever, and as long as you got around, you got a ton of points, you were beating people that did arguably much better programs. I think it's good now. I think what needs to happen, or what I would like to see happen, is that everything stays consistent all the way through the next Olympics so that everyone can get used to the new normal and plan accordingly. I think when you have this constantly moving target, it's a little bit disruptive, and it causes a lot of unnecessary confusion. And frankly, even for the judges, it's like going through the sheets during the events going, wait, now what, is this now a downgrade? Is this it just makes it unnecessarily complicated. So it would be great, I think, for everyone involved if they would leave things the way they are now, and everyone can deal with them, like it or hate it, but be able to adjust accordingly and to have a few seasons of a full competitive set before the next Olympics so that people can adjust.
Grades of execution now go from -5 to +5. Previously it was -3 to +3. In order to get the +5, there's certain criteria that needs to be followed, and this year what they've done is there's basically 3 main components to every single jump element that need to be established before you can get above, I believe, to get a +3 or above. Do you think that's going in the right direction?
Yes and no. I think there are some good in the sense that it allows people of a really high caliber to be graded more finely, because there's more room. However, I don't know if it can be applied universally, because that's a lot. There's just a lot of variables. Then, like, is there a meaningful difference between what people consider a +4 or a +5, and is it being applied consistently across all athletes? I think there's too much room now for things to be moving and pushing people up or pushing people down based on the amount, sort of the degrees of freedom that exist now. So I think it's a little bit to be determined, but I personally think there's too much discretion now on the technical side of things.
Do you ever see quads as required elements? As recent as 2002, the ladies were allowed to do a double jump in their short program as the individual jump element out of footwork. And we look at today, and basically the top 20 in the world are doing triples pretty easily. So do you think there's a point, not necessarily sometime soon, but do you think the sport is advancing to where potentially a quadruple jump is the required element for the short program?
I would be surprised if it becomes a rule anytime soon. I think really it's an implied requirement, right? Like you're not going to have nearly enough points to be on a podium at any major international event without them. I don't think it'll find its way into the rules, just because it's implicit. And I think too, like, there are countries that are, developing skaters that are new to skating, that they're just not going to be able to meet that standard. Some of the smaller countries that don't have strong competitors. And then at that point, you're like setting people up, requiring people to do things they're not capable of doing. They're going to get injured. It's not a good precedent to set, I don't think. So I hope that they don't go down that route. Because again, like, the people that are capable of doing things will do them, and they'll be rewarded. The points will be rewarded accordingly.
One other rule change, they took 30 seconds off of the free skates for the men. I think you obviously would have liked that, especially competing in Colorado Springs so often in the altitude and doing all those quads. Do you think it gives an advantage to certain skaters?
I don't think it gives an advantage really to anyone, because the 30 seconds it was essentially 30 seconds more of opportunity to earn bonus. I think the shorter long program is a good thing for the sport. 4.5 minutes is a long program. And there was a lot of filler that needed to be added. So I think going to the shorter format was a really smart move. It'll also make the events go quicker, hopefully. Because, if you're looking at the top 12, like, that's a 3+ hour event. So it's a long time to be in an arena. It's a long time to judge. It's a long time to block on TV. So I think it'll be more viewer friendly that way. And it's, I think, really beneficial to the people that draw 5th and 6th. Because if you're saving 2-3 minutes, that's a pretty big difference. Especially because the judging does take a lot longer now than it did prior to IJS. So I think it has certainly more benefits than not, but I don't think it would be necessarily an advantage within the confines of the actual program.
How do you think your own programs throughout your career, not necessarily from any Skate America, but in general, how do you think they would hold up with today's skaters?
Gosh, I think it's just so different. So when I first started doing 3 quads, it was under the old system, and you got through footwork in 15 seconds, and the spins didn't take that much effort and thought. They were just kind of placeholders. As much as none of us really should admit that, they kind of were in many ways. I think it's just different. I think the expectations are different. I did have a lot of what we call transitions now, so I had difficult entrances into some of my jumps and things like that. But then, there's a lot that we just didn't need to do because it wasn't sort of a requirement. I don't think the two are necessarily comparable. I think under IJS, results would have been much different, especially with the evaluation of the quad, because there were a lot of instances where we were all very tightly packed on the technical side, and then on the artistic side, I was not quite as strong, but I think my the distance I would have created on the technical side would have meant that I would have won more events than I did.
Do you think that IJS is better than 6.0?
No, I think 6.0 is better. I think for a variety of reasons. I think there's so much nuance to it that the casual observer isn't really going to understand. I mean, frankly, people in skating don't really understand always what all the points mean and how they're all being factored in and out. While it on paper looks more objective, I think there's just as much room to kind of push people up and down, either using the component scores or using the plus and minuses. So I think overall for the sport, it hasn't been a great thing. But we also know that we're not going back to 6.0. So I think the latest flavor of IJS is probably closer to getting to what everyone wants. And I think the results will be more reflective of what would have happened under 6.0 than previous iterations.
Finally, what do you think federations and organizers can do to bring more people into the sport?
I think it's tough. I think, if you look in Asia right now, skating is wildly popular. Granted, it's always been quite popular there, but with the number of champions, world champions, and Olympic medalists that have come out of Japan and now Korea, it's very popular there. Of course, skating has always been popular in Russia, and they're just dominating all of the events now, so it continues to be that. I think in North America especially, until we have sort of enduring champions like we had with Christy Yamaguchi, like we had with Nancy Kerrigan and Michelle Kwan, where they had really built a legacy, where they were around for at least 2 Olympic Games, where they there was a story arc to them. They didn't come up one season out of nowhere, come out of juniors and end up on the Olympic team. The public got to know them, they got to see them develop, and they got to see them become champion and then remain champion for a long period of time. I think until we have skaters that are enduring champions, that are consistently medaling and winning big international events, I think it's going to be tough to kind of get the public support to kind of generate the interest that we used to have. And I think too a little bit that the IJS has kind of hurt that, because people look at the scores, they're not very relatable. The judging is very difficult to understand, and people are like, why do people want to invest the time to kind of learn it? But I think that notwithstanding, if we have the next Michelle Kwan that's in for 2 Olympics, that is winning world championships and is really sort of dominating the sport, I think that would be a huge kickstart for skating in the U.S. again. This is Tim Goebel. I hope you enjoy watching Skate America, root for our kids, and enjoy the opening to another exciting season of figure skating.